Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for today's webinar. It's titled Protecting MRTs with Professional Liability Insurance. My name is Erica Stewart, and I am the Membership Manager at CAMRT. Today, we are joined by Lindsay Carey, who is a Director at BMS Canada, which is CAMRT's Professional Liability Insurance Broker. Having PLI is an essential part of your practice as an MRT. And today, Lindsay will speak to us about professional risks and how PLI can protect you. I'll turn it over to you, Lindsay.
Great, thanks so much, Erica. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Carey. I'm a director at BMS Group. I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. Thanks, everyone, for joining me today. Again, my name is Lindsay Carey. I'm from BMS Group, and I'm super excited to be talking to you today about protecting your practice. So this is liability insurance essentials for medical radiation technologists. BMS is thrilled to be partnered with CAMRT, and we're pleased to deliver your professional liability insurance and to be able to provide legal support. So just a quick overview of BMS and what we do. So our team is dedicated to working with associations and provides specialist coverage and risk management services to more than 700,000 professionals throughout Canada through more than 70 national and provincial associations, just like CAMRT. We've been the broker for the insurance program for over 10 years, and we're very proud to be working with all of you to be able to deliver tailored insurance policies for medical radiation technologists. Our brokers are available to help through a variety of channels, including a dedicated email address and phone number, which I will share at the end of the presentation. So some items that I'm going to go through today is what is professional liability insurance and why do you need it? Why is this so important? We'll go through some types of claims that are covered under the professional liability policy and some examples as well. We'll go through CAMRT coverage and a quick overview of some key policies and supplements that you have within your professional liability policy, and also some key considerations of the insurance if you are relying on your employer's policy versus having your own individual professional liability coverage. So over the past several years, the CAMRT program has grown exponentially and now represents over 9,000 participating members. And one of the benefits of being part of the member program is access to specialized legal support, including legal defense and claims handling. Members also have access to a free legal telephone assistance line through Gowling's WMG, and I'll get into this a little bit further in the presentation as well. We have defended over hundreds of claims and paid over $1 million in legal defense damages and claims costs throughout CAMRT's program insurance policy. So what is professional liability and why is it so important to have it? So professional liability protects you against liability for injury or damages that have resulted from an actual or alleged error, act, omission, or negligence committed allegedly in the performance or failure to perform your professional services as a medical radiation technologist. So the CAMRT policy would pay in the event that you do have a claim resulting from malpractice. This is going to pay your legal defense costs and any compensation that had been awarded to the patient if this was found guilty in court. So now we're going to get into the different types of professional liability claims that would be covered under the professional liability policy. So the first one is civil claims. So this is where an insured medical radiation technologist is required to respond to a statement of claim, threatening legal action, alleging professional negligence, error, or omission. So most commonly, an example of this would be if a lawsuit was filed in civil court alleging injury due to negligence. The next is the disciplinary or legal expense claims. And this is the most common type of complaint that we do see through the professional liability program. This is where an insured medical radiation technologist is required to respond to a complaint or an investigation from your college. So one example would be if there was a complaint made to your college alleging unprofessional behavior, such as bias, discriminatory treatment, or failure to obtain informed consent, And again, we'll get into some examples of the different types of claims moving forward, but this is definitely the most common type of claim that we do see through the program. And then finally, the last one, while uncommon, is criminal claims. This is where an insured medical radiation technologist is charged with a criminal offense related to your professional practice. And again, while uncommon, could still occur, and that's why you do want to have professional liability policy in place to respond. So now we're going to get into some examples of the three types of claims that we just went through. So the first one is that civil claim. So one common example could include a patient has filed a civil lawsuit against you alleging they sustained a significant injury to their hand and wrist during the positioning process for a diagnostic imaging procedure. According to the patient, excessive force and improper technique was used while their arm was being positioned, resulting in acute pain and restricted movement. So now the patient is seeking compensation for medical expenses, lost wages, ongoing physiotherapy, and pain and suffering. So in this situation, you would want to report this potential claim or actual claim directly under your professional liability insurance policy. And the coverage would provide the cost of your legal defense, so hiring a lawyer throughout this claims process, and any sums that you're legally obligated to pay, again, if this were to be found guilty and you did need to pay compensation to your patient. So next we'll get into disciplinary claims. So this would be also known as college complaints. So first, I just wanted to highlight the purpose of a regulatory body or the college. And this would be to protect the public through licensing, regulation, and discipline of their registrants. So if you are a member of the college, you must abide by the legislation, bylaws, code of ethics, and standards of practice. And the college is where you could also turn to if you have any questions around your scope of practice and what services you are and aren't able to perform. So, in the event of a college complaint, there are several outcomes that could come from having a complaint to your regulatory body. This could include dismiss of a complaint. You could have an investigation or a disciplinary hearing. And after the investigation, there may be imposed restrictions, limitation, or further education that you would have to complete in order for you to be able to continue to practice after the complaints process. And during this time, after you have reported that complaint directly to the insurance company, you would have assistance through the professional liability insurance to assist with that complaint process. So now we'll get into an example of the disciplinary legal expense costs or claims, sorry. And again, this would be the college complaint that we do see. So in this example, a son of a patient has filed a formal complaint alleging that a medical radiation technologist demonstrated a disregard for his mother's repeated complaints of pain during the positioning process for a series of diagnostic x-rays. So furthermore, an investigation has been initiated to review the conduct of the MRT involved and whether proper documentation, consent, and communication was upheld. So in this situation, whether it's a potential complaint or you have received a complaint letter, you would want to report something like this directly to the insurance company for further assistance with the complaint. In this situation, the CAMRT professional liability policy would provide disciplinary defense costs, so assistance with the complaint, and in the event that you had to hire a lawyer, up to $75,000 per complaint. And then if there were to be multiple complaints during the year, it would be $125,000 per year. And here we just wanted to highlight the types of claims that we are seeing directly through the CAMRT professional liability program. So as you can see, the dark blue represents the disciplinary and college complaints that we just previously went over versus the civil claims that we are seeing through the program. So there is the vast majority of the types of claims we are seeing are related to college complaints. So lastly, like I had noted, criminal claims, while we do not find that they are common, it is important in the event of a claim to have this type of coverage. So one example could be that a patient accuses their MRT of sexual assault during an examination. the patient goes to the police to have the criminal charges brought against this individual. So through the CAMRT professional liability, you would have legal defense costs up to $125,000 in the event that you are not found guilty. So you would report this directly to the insurance company, and then you would be reimbursed for your legal defense costs once a non-guilty verdict was found. Great. So we just went over the different types of claims that we can see through the professional liability policy. And then on this slide, we just wanted to go over some highlights of the professional liability policy through the CAMRT specific member program. So your professional liability through the CAMRT program has a limit of $5 million per claim and $5 million per year. Where you see that aggregate there, that means per year. So if there were multiple claims, we would pay up to the $5 million aggregate limit. And this cost is going to pay for your legal costs in the case of a claim. And should you need to hire an attorney, it will cover legal fees throughout the lifetime of a complaint, as well as any compensation that has been awarded. The policy also extends to cover your services delivered worldwide when you are working within your regulatory scope of practice, and it will respond to defend against insured claims that are brought forward and defended within Canada. So, what this means is you could be working out of province and treating clients anywhere in the world, provided that you're working in the scope of practice of where you are located and where your client is located. So some additional coverage included within the professional liability. So we've already touched on the disciplinary legal expense costs. That would be for those college complaints that could be brought forward. $75,000 per complaint, $125,000 for the full year. We've got the criminal defense costs that we already touched on as well. So this would be on a reimbursement basis up to $125,000. And then a number of additional coverage, including loss of earnings. So this would be if you had to defend yourself in civil court. We would pay your loss of earnings of your salary for that day while you're not working, defending yourself in court. So the professional liability policy is on a claims made policy form. And this means that the policy is triggered when a claim is made against you during the policy period. And this is regardless of when the wrongful act or the incident that gave rise to a claim took place. So, for instance, if you receive a notice today from your regulatory body that a complaint has been made, you should report under the policy that you have in place right now. And that's even if the complaint is stemming from a session that you had with a patient several years ago. And we'll get into that a little bit in the next slides as well. There's also no retroactive date on the policy, and it's full prior acts coverage. So this means if a claim is arising from acts that happened several years before the start date or the inception date of your policy, this would be picked up by the CAMRT coverage. There is 10 years of extended reporting coverage, and we'll get into this again in the later slides with an example. There is also no deductible on the professional liability policy. So this means if you do have an insured claim under the program and it is a civil or regulatory complaint, you will not have to pay out of pocket for these costs. Other coverages include a pro bono legal hotline, which I will provide at the end of the presentation, specialist broker support, and of course endorsed by CAMRT. So now we'll go into some frequently asked questions, including touching base more on the retroactive date and the extended reporting coverage. So what is a retroactive date? So this is the earliest date on which injury or damage may occur and it still be covered under the policy. The wrongful act or incident that gave rise to a claim must have taken place on or after the retroactive date for the coverage to apply. So here's a quick scenario to go over. If an MRT joins the CAMRT member insurance program in 2023, but they have been practicing since 2010. Now in 2025, she is being sued by a patient she treated in 2015. So that is a lot of dates being thrown around, but does this individual have coverage under the current CAMRT professional liability policy? And the answer is yes. Because there's no retroactive date on the policy, this is a positive thing, meaning that her policy today in 2025 will still respond to a complaint or claim made from a patient she treated over 10 years ago. Next, we'll get into extended reporting period. This is also often referred to as tail coverage as well. And this is a designated time period after a claims made policy has expired, during which a claim can be made and coverage is triggered as if the claim had been made during the policy period. This is applicable to new claims that come forward after the policy has expired and in respect to acts, errors, or omissions committed prior to the expiry of the policy. So in this scenario, an MRT is insured under the CAMRT program, and now they are retiring and they're letting their policy lapse. So would this individual be protected for future claims that may be brought forward against them arising from past services? And the answer would be yes. So if you let your policy lapse and you're no longer practicing after the expiry date of your policy, you have 10 years of coverage to assist you in the event that there is a claim that's made from your previous work while you were still practicing. So now we're going to get into the main differences between holding your own individual policy and relying on your employer's policy as well. And what are some of the benefits of having your own individual policy? So, number one, it could be a regulatory requirement in your province to hold individual professional liability coverage. But beyond this, there are many reasons why an MRT may want to consider getting their own policy. This would include having individual limits. So, as we saw in the earlier slides, through the CAMRT program, you have access to 5 million per claim and per year to assist with any claims or complaints that could be brought forward. And these are individual limits, just yourself, whereas an employer may have a larger limit available, but that would be available to everybody. The individual coverage is through CAMRT is not restricted to your place of employment, so it will follow you wherever you're practicing as long as you're acting within your scope of practice. It includes key additional coverage such as the disciplinary legal expense coverage, and it's going to cover past services. So as we chatted about with the retroactive date, this is going to pick up anything with your current policy in place. So here we'll go into a little bit more details on the key differences between the individual and employer's policy and some considerations for you. So oftentimes an employer's policy, whether this is through the hospital or the health region, won't include certain elements of coverage. So it typically does not include coverage for disciplinary or legal expense claims. This would be college complaints. And as we previously noted, this is the most common type of claim or complaint that we're seeing through the professional liability policy. So you do want to ensure if you are relying on employer's policy to check to make sure that they do have that coverage in place for you. It also generally does not cover or reimburse criminal defense costs. So again, although uncommon, you do want to make sure you have that protection in place if something were to arise. It's typically restricted to scope of work or place of employment. So it will cover you while you're working at that one hospital setting. If you are working out of multiple locations or different clinics, you want to make sure that you do have protection to extend to your entire scope of practice. And finally, the individual healthcare professional is typically not named directly on the employer's policy. So it may give you a bit of peace of mind to have your own certificate of insurance with your name and individual policy limits to respond. Some other benefits of holding an individual policy could include that loss of earnings that we chatted about. So this would be if there was a civil claim and you had to defend yourself in court, we would pay your loss of earnings for that day. And then the CAMRT policy, also includes the pro bono legal advice services that you can access at any time. So here are some considerations for your practice. A medical radiation technologist moves from private practice to the hospital setting, and then 2 years later, the MRT is sued by a patient that they had previously treated while in private practice. This is something that comes up a lot. There is typically no insurance coverage for this claim under the hospital's insurance policy, as you weren't covered by the hospital in the previous years. So this would be something that you would want to check with your hospital or employer's policy to ensure that you do have coverage in place for your work prior to relying on your employer's policy. The next one is a medical radiation technologist is terminated from their job at a local hospital due to allegations of discrimination and unprofessional conduct brought forward by coworkers. The employer has now notified the provincial college in accordance with the college's mandatory reporting requirements, and the college has now launched an investigation, and you do require disciplinary hearing costs. So there's likely no insurance coverage for this type of complaint under the hospital's insurance policy, as we previously noted. Typically, there is no cost for college complaints directly under the insurance through your employer. So here's just some common questions you may want to ask yourself if you are choosing between relying on your employer's policy or having your own individual professional liability. So if you're working at multiple employment sites or volunteering at multiple locations, may want to consider your own individual coverage to extend to all aspects of your work. And again, as we already highlighted, you will want protection for college complaints, criminal charges, claims based on your past work, or claims after retirement. So these are all kind of questions you'll want to consider or ask your employer or hospital setting to ensure that you are protecting yourself and their policy will adequately extend to all situations that you may find yourself in. So now we're going to get into what to do if you do have a claim or complaint made against you, and what are some of the steps and considerations you should take. So immediately you should report directly to the insurance company, and this phone number and email address will be on your certificate of insurance, which is your proof of coverage. We do want to make sure you're reporting immediately, even if it's a potential claim or complaint, to ensure there's no late reporting. What you'll want to do is formally document the incident, including all details of who were involved, and then submit any information, including any formal statement of claim or anything you've received in writing, directly to the insurance company with the certificate of insurance. And again, very important to immediately report any investigations or notices of complaint. I will also provide BMS's phone number at the end of the presentation, sorry. You can always give us a call to chat through if you're unsure of how to report or if you should report something, and we're happy to walk through that with you. Here's just a quick snapshot of the typical claim or complaints process. So once you do report directly to the insurance company using that email and phone number provided, you will be assigned a claims adjuster. And your adjuster will be your main point of contact throughout the claim or complaint process and to assist you with next steps and any questions you have. Your adjuster will then review all the claims documents, including the policy wording, your certificate of insurance, which is your proof of coverage, and then the claim or complaint letter that you have received. From there, there will be a discussion on coverage position. So whether the claim is approved or declined, depending on what the situation is and if the policy wording is triggered. Next, you'll be appointed legal counsel if available and if applicable for the situation that you find yourself in. And the legal counsel and your adjuster will be your main point of contact moving forward to help ensure this is a smooth, clean claims process. So through the CAMRT program, you're provided specialist support. So as I noted earlier, BMS is here with knowledgeable brokers to assist with any questions that you may have. So as your broker, we're able to assist with coverage related questions. Do you have any questions related to the sublimits we went through? reporting a claim or potential complaint. What does this look like? Do you need help navigating that situation? Has something come up where you want to see if this is something you can report? That's what BMS is here for. Purchasing additional insurance products. So if you are an independent contractor or you do want to chat about an accident coverage that we may have available or cyber, we're happy to look through additional products for you as well. As well as obtaining a copy of the policy wording. This would include any terms, exclusions, conditions, anything that you may find as a certificate of insurance that you're provided is just a quick snapshot of what the whole policy covers. And you can see here I have our phone number and dedicated email address if you want to give us a call at any time. And then next, we have your pro bono legal helpline. This is through Gallings WMG, which is the legal firm that BMS works with. And this would be in the event that there's not a claim or complaint, but you do have a practice-related legal question. So Gallings WMG will be there to support any legal question that you do have related to your practice. And the most common types of questions that we typically receive are around privacy and confidentiality, if there's a conflict of interest, how to respond to requests for information from third parties, or any ethical or professional obligations. And here is the phone number where you can access that pro bono legal helpline at any time. Again, if it was related to a claim or complaint, you'll want to come to BMS Group directly or report directly to the insurance company, as this is just related for practice-related questions. So here I've just put our phone number and our email address again for anybody to connect after the presentation. I'm happy to go through any questions now as this kind of completes the presentation, but I can certainly send this around in the chat as well if anybody needs this. I do see there are a few questions, so I'm just going to open that up here. So our first question, do you require professional liability into retirement? So this goes back to the extended reporting period that we chatted about earlier. So in the event that you are retired and your policy has expired, you can let your professional liability policy lapse. And this is going to provide you with 10 years of extended reporting coverage. So this is inactive insurance coverage, but it will, in the event of a claim, it will provide you coverage from your previous work. Up to 10 years is included for no additional cost. And this is going to be automatically applied after your expiry date. So there's no application or additional coverage that you need to purchase at that time. And then the next question is, how are you notified when a claim is made against you? This is by email or phone. So this is a great question. Typically, a claim or complaint comes from written notice. So this would either be by email or sometimes often mailed to you as well. It can come from a variety of channels, but we often find the most common to be mailed these days. And then what you would do with that claim or complaint letter is you would send that again directly to the insurance company along with your certificate of insurance. So an adjuster can be assigned and they can assist with next steps and how to navigate that claim situation.
I'm just going to jump in quickly too. So you mentioned the certificate of insurance. And so recently CAMRT added everyone's professional liability certificate into their member accounts. So if you are looking for that, you can certainly contact us, but you can just log into your member account under My Membership and you'll see a section that says PLI certificate and you can download it for the year in question.
Perfect. Thanks, Erica. So I do have a question that says, a lot of people feel that professional liability is only useful for MRTs working in clinical settings. Can you expand how professional liability is used for MRT working in a non-clinical role, such as education and management? So in the event that you are a regulated profession, if you work in a regulated province, there can still be complaints made to the regulatory body. This can come from employers. This can come from personal matters. This can also come from any patients. So in the event there is a college complaint, this can really stem from anywhere. It is related to your scope of practice, but in the event that there's like a consent issue or discriminatory complaint, that can still be something that could apply to MRTs working in a non clinical setting as well. Okay. Oh, perfect. And I have a question about where can I find my certificate of insurance? And I believe Erica had already answered that question, so that's great. Can you let insurance lapse 10 years before you retire and still be covered? Yes. So, sorry, I'm trying to get the context around this question. So, in the event that you're still practicing, you would want to make sure that you are still renewing active coverage and you have that in place because the extended reporting period is only going to apply if you are not practicing. So, if you're on maternity leave or you've discontinued practice or if you're retired, that's when you're going to get that 10 years of coverage automatically applied. Now, you won't want to rely on the extended reporting period if you are still practicing. Hopefully, that kind of answers that question. I think I have another question on the extended reporting period here, so I'm just going to read this one out. Can you go over their coverage for a retired MRT? How long does the coverage extend for? 10 years? What happens if a complaint is made 10.5 years out? Yeah, so that's a great question. So the extended reporting period, yes, it is 10 years from the expiry date of your policy. So, in the event that there's a claim or complaint made past the 10 years, it wouldn't be something picked up by the policy. Now, typically, BMS has not found that a ton of, or if any, claims or complaints has been made past the 10 years of coverage. You do have the ability to continue to purchase coverage after the 10 years. But again, we do not find that a ton of claim or complaints come after that 10-year period. So this one says, what happens if an MRT student has unprofessional actions reported against them? Does their MRT get disciplinary action? So, this again is a great question. So, in the event that there is a college complaint made against you, and it's listing a student or another individual, it's important that you have individual professional liability to respond. So, in the event that a student causes like a college complaint to be made against you, that would still be something that's picked up under the professional liability policy as well. So you don't have to worry about it not responding because if you were kind of vicariously named in a college complaint, the coverage would still respond if the college complaint was naming you as well. Okay, and then I have, I think, one final question here. So, my employer has x ray techs performing EKGs. I don't believe this is within our scope of practice. If a claim were brought against us as a result of performing EKGs, would this be covered by our professional liability? Yeah, so this is a great question. So, the professional liability policy will only respond to claims or complaints regarding your scope of practice. So, in the event that you're not acting within your scope of practice, it won't be picked up by the professional liability policy. So, we often find that multidiscipline individuals will need to secure multiple policies to cover different disciplines that they are working. However, if it is within your scope of practice and you have confirmed that with your regulatory body, then the coverage will extend to your entire scope of practice as defined by your regulatory body. Yes, Karen, I see your hand is up.
Sorry, Lindsay, I know this question is a bit complicated, and I know it's coming from a province where there is no provincial regulatory body. Could you maybe explain, whether the policy applies in that situation?
Yeah, great. Yeah, great question. So, in the event that you don't have a regulatory body to rely on, you would want to make sure you're still abiding by the regulation or the qualifications that you have been trained in. So, if you haven't been trained in a certain aspect of services that you are delivering, then it wouldn't be covered by the policy. So, as long as you're acting within your scope of practice as an MRT, it would be covered by the policy. Hopefully that kind of answers things for Karen. Okay, and then I have another question that says, could you share the PDF of your presentation after the course? And yes, I do believe that Erica has recorded this, so it will be available to everybody after the presentation. Okay, perfect. And then we do have another question on how many claims that we do see per year on average. This is a great question. They do vary from year to year, so I don't have an exact number, but I can definitely look into that a little bit further and potentially share that at a later date. I would say that most of the data that BMS collects are the different types of complaints and claims, which is kind of where that pie chart previously shared came from. So this is going to be mostly disciplinary college complaints that we do see through the program, which is why we want to, highlight the difference between the employer's policy versus individual, because this is truly the data that we are seeing is college complaints. And this is not just true for CAMRT members. This is kind of something that we're seeing throughout all of the healthcare professionals that we assist. So yeah, it is. But in terms of the amount of claims, that would be something that I would have to look into. So, what happens if a complaint is made against a technical assistant working under the MRT? Will my professional liability cover this? So, great question. Oftentimes, this would be outlined directly in the policy wording. So, I would have to refer back to the policy wording if the professional liability coverage does extend. Oftentimes, professional liability coverage does extend to students or assistants while working directly under supervision. But that's a good takeaway from me. Let me take that away, and then I can send that information to maybe Erica and Karen, who can share that afterwards.
There's a few questions that are coming up about the students still, and student membership does not include professional liability insurance through CMRT because the students are not yet certified MRTs. Do you have an answer as to, I mean, we've covered a little bit about what happens to the supervisor if something were to come up against the student.
Yeah.
But then for the student, how are they covered? I will let you answer it in a better way than I could, but how are they, if something comes up against them, they don't have insurance through us, but they are acting and interacting with patients.
Right, exactly. So oftentimes it will be more likely that the supervisor will be named in the complaint. If the student is not yet registered with a regulatory body, there won't be any complaints that could be made to the college. Now, oftentimes students and assistants can rely on their supervisor's policies through CAMRT. So I do believe that the coverage does extend to these individuals. But again, just a good takeaway from me, just to make sure that I can communicate that clearly, and I'll send that across later.
When we were talking about the situation where someone is asked to do a certain role, but it's in a province that's not regulated, so the scope of practice is set differently than other provinces, someone has asked if radiation safety officers would be covered in that same capacity.
Yeah, so as long as you're acting within your scope of practice, based on the qualifications and within your particular province, if it's not a regulated profession in that particular province, it would be covered by the policy. So as long as you're acting within your scope of practice, the professional liability will extend.
think we might have exhausted all the questions.
Yeah, I think I was just looking there too, Erica, just to make sure. Is there any final questions? We'll leave the Q&A open for just another minute or so.
I did want to say too, questions come up all the time. So this is obviously an excellent platform for everyone to be able to ask them directly to BMS or to CAMRT while we're both on the call here. But we get questions like this on a weekly basis. So certainly don't hesitate to reach out to, you can reach out to CAMRT or to BMS, we'll put you through to BMS directly. So either one, you'll get your answers. So don't feel like you need to, come up with questions now. If something arises or you're thinking back through the presentation or reviewing it, or you're having conversations with your colleagues or your employer afterwards, we're here to help you. The CAMRT membership has professional liability insurance included in the full practice membership, in the limited practice membership and the temporary practice membership. So it's automatically included if you select one of those membership types, which is the majority of our members. And of course, as I mentioned, questions can come in at any time, and we are here to help you with that.
Perfect. That's great. Well, thank you everyone for having me today. Thanks, Erica and Karen as well. Yeah, if there's any questions, the presentation will be shared. So if anything comes up, you do have BMS's contact information. We're certainly ready and able to assist with any coverage related questions that come up.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Lindsay. And I think it was really valuable for all of our members online. And of course, all of our members will be able to view this at a later point in time as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share all that insight with our members.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, everybody.